Welcome back. This video is the start of a new section by looking at controlling the flow of an application. So in order to control the flow of an application, there's different ways that we can do this, and one of the ways is if-else statements. So let's look at if-else statements in Dart. So like any other programming language, it's basically exactly the same. So if you already did if and else statements previously, this will be a no-brainer for you. So I'm going to start off by declaring a variable. Let's call it number, and I'm going to set that number. Why do I declare it as a constant? In the previous videos we realized now that because this can be assigned already on compile time, constant is the best one to use. So I'm going to say const number equals 7. Now let's start with a few if statements here. So I can test if the number is exactly 5. That could be one of my if statements. Then I can print out the number is 5. I can then have another if statement to check if the number is greater than 5. Then I can print out something else. So I can print the number is greater than 5. I can even have another if statement there to check if the number is, let's say, greater than 10. And I will print out the number is greater than 10. So if you look at an if statement has a set of brackets there, and inside of that brackets is your Boolean expression that you want to evaluate. So it's a lot the same as the ternary operator that we did. So we're basically asking, if this expression is true, then do this part for me. Okay, and you can see that this part that needs to execute can be one line or it can be more than one line. And you can see this curly braces indicates the part that must execute if this statement is in fact true. So in our case, we're only printing out one line, but I could also print out another line that will say something else. So I could say hello or something like that. And if the value is then exactly 5, let's test it on exactly 5, it will print out everything I have or do everything I have between these two curly brackets. In this case, the number is 5. And hello will be printed out, because if the number is equal to 5, it's going to execute what is between these two brackets, which is both those lines, and that's why we get that output. If, for example, I say 10 there and I run it, it will go to this if statement and see the number is not equal to 5, so it will not print out this. It will go then to this if statement and check, is the number greater than 5? Yes, it is. So it's going to print out the number is greater than 5. And then it's going to look at if the number is greater than 10, it's going to print out this, but the number is not greater than 10, that's why it didn't print out. But if I make that an 11, it will also print out this statement at the bottom. Right, so we can see that if statements is helping us to control the flow of an application, because I'm asking if the number is 5, then do this. If the number is this, or greater than 5, do that. And if the number is greater than 10, do this. And you can see it's not everything that gets executed. It controls the flow of the application. Only certain parts of the application gets executed, depending on the value that you're testing for. But now you can see also these if statements will always be tested. So this if statement will be tested if the number is equal to 5. This one will also be tested, and that one will also be tested. So if I want to have a situation where, for example, I test if the number is 5, then I must do something. But if the number is not 5, I should do something else. But if the number is 5, I should not do the rest. Okay, so just to get your program a bit more efficient, we could do the following. So I'm going to remove this hello print there. So instead of just going over and saying, well, this is another if statement, we could also have an else if there. So what is the difference now just between a normal if statement and the else if? For the if statement will always execute this testing part. Whereas if you add an else if there, let's say the number is equal to 5, then it will never even go to the else if to check the next part of it. So let's look at an example. So I'm going to say else if the number is greater than 5, then we print the number is greater than 5. So what happens now is it's going to test if the number is equal to 5. So if the number is in fact equal to 5 here, it will just print out this part, and the compiler will not even go to this part to test it because of the else if there. So we're saying if the number is equal to 5, then do this. But if it's not equal to 5, only then go and evaluate this expression. So that's the nice thing about the if and the else if. You take away some of the work of your program if you use your else if statement. So it doesn't need to evaluate every single expression. And also your output will be a lot better, because we had a number that was greater than 10, which printed out greater than 5 and greater than 10. What if we just wanted to print out the number is greater than 10 and not the number is greater than 5? So we will look at that now. So let's go to the next one. Let's say we're going to add another else if statement there. If the number is greater than 10, we can print out the number is greater than 10. And if we run this one now, you can see our number is exactly 5, and it will only print out the number is 5. So it went to this if statement, it checked for the number is equal to 5, it found the number is equal to 5, so it goes into this statement and it prints out the number is 5. It will not evaluate these other two because of the else in there. Right, so now let's try something else. Let's try a 7, and we run it again. So what will happen now, it's going to go to this first if statement and evaluate. Is the number equal to 5? No, it's not. So it will not execute this line, and it will go to the else if and evaluate this one. Is the number greater than 5? Yes, it is. So it's going to print out the number is greater than 5. And it will ignore this else if totally, because this one is already true. So it will print out the number is greater than 5. Now, what if the number is greater than 10? So let's make it 11. And we run this. So you would think that it's going to go to this last one and print out the number is greater than 10. But if you look at the print statement, it says the number is greater than 5. So why is this happening? So it went to number equal 5, and it said, well, the number is not equal to 5, it's 11. So it will not print out that part. So then it will only then go into this else if and say, is the number greater than 5? Yes, it is greater than 5. It will print out this statement, and it will totally ignore this one. So the way that we can do this is to have my number at the top first. So I'll first check if it's greater than 10. If it's not greater than 10, then check if it's greater than 5. Let's see if this works the other way around. So now you can see it will first get to the 10 here and see, oh, the number is greater than 10, and print out the number is greater than 10, and then it will not go into this part to print out the 5. So now again, will it work for something that's between 5 and 10? Let's see that one. For a 6, this one will be false, so it will not print out the value is greater than 10, and it will go to number greater than 5 and print out the number is greater than 5. So the last part of this, we can also add an else here without an if. So what this else means then is, if this if statement is false, that one is false, that one is false, and every other else if statement is false, then and only then will it execute your else part. So here we can print out. So let's just look at the options. If it's not a 5, it's not greater than 10, and it's also not greater than 5, then it must be less than 5. So we can have the number is less than 5. So if I type in anything else than a 5, or bigger than 10, or bigger than 5, then it must be less than 5. So let's say, for example, a 3 there. If we run this, the first if statement will be false. The second if statement will be false because it's not greater than 10. This one will be false because it's not greater than 5. And because all of the previous ones are false, it's going to execute the else there, which will print out the number is less than 5. Let's look at a quick example again. So another one, Again, I'm going to declare this as a constant. I'm going to declare it as a mark. And let's say the mark of this person for a test is a 47%. Let me just add some enter so we get some space here. So we've got a 47% mark there. And let's say we want to check this mark now and say whether this guy's got a distinction or whatever. So I'm going to test if the mark is less than 50. Then we know this guy failed. So we know he failed. Comment, single line comment after that, he failed. So the compiler won't read this. So that's when he failed. Then we could also have an else part there. So if this one says the mark less than 50 is false, then it means that the mark is not less than 50, which means it must be more than 50. So this is when the guy actually passed. So I'm testing here. If the mark is less than 50, the guy failed. The else would be this guy passed. But let's say we don't want to only print out whether he failed or passed. So we can say print out here, you failed. And we can print out here, you passed. So if we run this, you will see because it's less than 50, it will print out you failed. But if I make it more than 50, you will see that you passed. Okay, so that's this if else works perfectly, but let's say we want to do a bit more. So let's say I don't want to only, let's keep the failed there, and let's go to the passed part. Let's say we want to check not only if the guy passed or failed, but we want to check whether he's got a distinction or just passed. So I could go into this else and have a nested if statement. So this is an if statement inside another if statement or inside of an else. And that we call a nested if statement. So I'm going to test here. So in this else, I already know that he passed. But now I want to make sure how did he pass. So if the mark is greater than or equal 80, then we know this person should get a distinction. So I'm going to print out, you have a distinction. And then the else here would mean what? So if you go into this else, it means the guy passed. Now we want to check how did he pass. So if the mark is greater than or equal 80, he's got a distinction. What will be the else? It's not greater than 80, greater or equal 80, which means it's 80 or less. And that just means that he passed. So I'm just going to say you passed. So instead of just saying you passed, we will have first checking whether it's a distinction to tell him he's got a distinction, and then say whether, or it's going to either be a distinction or the guy passed. Right, so let's quickly have a look at, let's add the value 90 there and run this quickly. Then it will print out you have a distinction because 90 is above 80. So it went first to this if statement and checked, is the mark less than 50? No, it's not. So it's going to go into the else, which means he passed. Then inside here, we first check, is the mark greater than 80? Yes, it is, because it's 90, greater or equal to 80. It's 90. So it will print out this part, and it will ignore the else because this part already executed. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try a 67. So let's see what will happen with the 67. Is the mark less than 50? No, it's bigger than 50. So it will not execute this part. Then it's going into the else. Now we're testing. Is the mark greater or equal 80? No, it's not. So it's going to go to this else, and it prints out you passed. So if we run this, it will tell us that you have passed. Right, let's see if we can do something in this one also, but just to not say only that he failed, but maybe if he's got between 45 and 50, which means more than or equal 45, but still less than 50, then he will qualify for a reassessment of the exam. So we can do the following. Again, a nested if statement. If that mark is greater than or equal to 45. So remember now, when it gets into this if statement, it means that the mark is less than 50. So it's 49 or below. Then it gets into this if statement. And then we check if the mark is greater than or equal 45. So we already know it cannot be more than 49. So if it's more or equal to 45, it means it's between 45 and 49, the value that we can get. And if we get that, we will allow him to write reassessment. You qualify for reassessment. And then we can also have an else here. And this else will do what? So if the mark is greater than or equal 45, if this is false, it means that the mark must be less than 45. And this means then this guy failed. And you failed actually miserably. Let's just use single quotation marks there. Right, you failed. So this is the nested if-else statements. So it's an if statement inside of another if statement, then we call that a nested if statement. Right, so let's just check out this one. So if the person gets a 90%, let's say a 90% there, and we run it, it should tell us you have a distinction. If he's got, let's say, a 60%, then he passed, but it's without a distinction, so you just passed. If he's got 48%, which is almost a pass, then he will qualify for reassessment because it's between 45 and 49. Even a 49 will give you the same output because he qualifies for reassessment. A 45 will give you the same because it's between 45 and 49. Okay, and then the last part is if he's got below 45, then he do not qualify for reassessment. He failed miserably. So you can see using if statements helps us to control the flow of my application to get one specific task done. So we will look at some useful operations with ifs inside and outside a range in the next video, and then we'll move on to loops that will also help us to control the flow of an application. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.